thank you for waiting. Our internet and power embarrassed us in front of company. Marc Lamont Hill is here. Marc Lamont Hill and I are going to talk. But first, let me tell you what went on. We had a power outage, and then we had internet issues. And you guys were like, oh, my gosh, Don, where are you? Here I am. Mark, I'm not sure if you know, we do a live show, live at 5 every day. Instead of doing it from home, where my internet always works, where I pay my utility bills. I'm kidding, we do pay the bills. The internet always works. So this is our first time doing this at the office. I wanted to make sure that I got Marc Lamont Hill because it's the first time I'm having a guest for the live show. And what do you know? Murphy's Law. So Mark, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. I've been watching your coverage on what's happening. Obviously, I've been watching Israel and Gaza, and you have been doing a phenomenal job. You have been steadfast in your beliefs, and we'll talk about that. But can we just talk about the newest thing to happen? And that is what's happening on college campuses, okay? We're not ignoring at all what's happening in Israel and Gaza. But let's talk about what's happening here. When you last night, your opinion as you were watching watching Columbia and then remove the protesters from the building and from the vicinity, what did you think?
I wish I could say that I was surprised. You know, in 2014, when we were marching in the streets of Ferguson and many people were chanting about Palestine and free Palestine, and people said, what's the connection? We said there's always a connection between, you know, Palestinian liberation and police repression in the United States and how those two things are interlocked for lots of reasons. Last night, we saw another example of that. Palestinian liberation movements, Palestinian resistance was met with police repression. This Columbia University has a long history of this. You know, we saw this at the Vietnam War protests in 1968. They did the exact same thing. They locked up a bunch of students. And now you add Mayor Eric Adams, who has never met a problem that he doesn't want to arrest. You know, you end up with an outcome like this, where instead of meeting student demands, instead of having dialogue, you end up with a bunch of students attacked. I was talking to students live from the building as they were talking about cranes being lifted to pull them out, students being knocked unconscious and dragged. I mean, the whole scene was ugly, but it was also so unnecessary.
Well, why do you think it was unnecessary? Because there are, as you know, we saw the images of, and we'll talk about the tweet because I have a tweet. It's very controversial and people are discussing it, but I want to clarify exactly what I meant. But why do you think it was unnecessary when the students went into a building, broke into a building and wouldn't leave? Why do you think it was unnecessary?
You know, I think the language and the framing of it is important. They did break into a building in the technical sense, and they wouldn't leave, of course. But when I think about the civil rights tradition, which you alluded to in your tweet, that's also what they were doing. A sit-in is taking over space and not leaving. You know, not a bus, but sitting on the Edmund Pettus Bridge is civil disobedience, and it's actually illegal. It's loitering. It's all kinds of. There are multiple charges you could receive for that. So, in the civil rights tradition, breaking the law, what John Lewis called good trouble, is what we're supposed to be doing. So, I don't vilify the students for that. The question, though, that I think is important, and I think a lot of people are raising it, including you, is was it safe? And to me, when the police show up, they made the situation less safe. They escalated rather than de-escalated the situation. Those students staying in the building demanding justice, I think, is one thing. But when the police start dragging people, when people are getting knocked unconscious, when people are saying they can't breathe, all this stuff, it becomes an ugly scene.
Yeah. Hey, listen, so Mark, do we take questions from our streamers, if you don't mind taking some questions?
Of course.
Okay, I'm going to ask. So guys, if you have questions for Marc Lamont Hill, if there's anything you want to know, whether you agree with him or disagree with him, please let us know. And by the way, you guys should know, Mark and I are friends. We have known each other for years. We've worked together. We agreed when I was on CNN, and sometimes we disagreed, but we still remain friends. Sometimes we vehemently disagreed with each other. And I think this is a good lesson. And I think we are and were a good lesson on how you should be communicating, Mark. So if you guys have any questions for Mark, let's take them. Okay, so Mark, here's what I'm gonna put up what I tweeted, and then I'm gonna talk to you about why I tweeted that. Okay, I'm not sure if we're able to run the video because we had some video considering everything that happened, but if we have some of the video, I want my guys here to pull it up. So Mark, here's what I said. I said, here we go. Now I can't find it. Okay. I said, peaceful nonviolence was a predicate of the civil rights movement. Taking over a building and destroying property feels January 6th-ish to me. I didn't say it was completely January 6th, but I can see how people would become upset by that. What did you think?
I thought it was a little tone deaf. I get the idea of saying, hey, you're going to have a demonstration, be safe, don't destroy property. There are rules and levels of discipline attached to any kind of civil rights tradition, act of resistance. I wouldn't disagree with that. But I think what happened was when you see these students standing up for a righteous cause, and they're not tearing up furniture, they're not breaking into the Speaker of the House's house, they're not trying to do physical harm to members of the administration. When I see the students simply demanding justice and engaging in active civil disobedience, which again I concede is illegal, as they all are, I think the proper response is to affirm them or to say, "Hey, I love what y'all are doing. Let's just be mindful of X, Y, and Z." But I think when you brought up January 6th, when you liken them to these people who are literally trying to overthrow the government, it put them in very strange company, and I think it felt like an unnecessary attack on these young people.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I want to play this video for you, and then we'll discuss what you said in the video. Roll it, please.
I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win. I believe that we will win.
Occupation no more! They are being assholes.
Okay, that's some of it, and you saw the breaking of the windows and whatever. And there's other video. And yeah, listen, we know that protests, you can't control everyone with protest, and those things happen, right? So I have to say, Mark, another one of our friends who you know, I won't say his name. He wears dreads, and he's in sports. I think you know who I'm talking about. And here is what he said about that. He sent me. He agrees with you. He said, Don, I must say I disagree with equating passionate, naive, misguided, stupid college students with a byproduct of a planned, coordinated attempt to overthrow the transfer of power. I get they're both chaotic, but for me, that chaos doesn't come from the same place. I don't disagree with that. And then I said, I don't disagree with that. I say destruction of property is destruction of property, no matter how people try to rationalize it. When you destroy property and you break into a building and you hold people hostage, which they did for a moment, I'm not sure if that they qualify that right as hostages, that some of the workers couldn't get out. I said, when you do that, you lose the moral high ground, just as folks say Israel lost the moral high ground because they feel it's a disproportionate response. There should not be a double standard. What do you say to that?
Hold
on one second. I said we can hold two thoughts. We can support the students' right to protest, and we can also disagree with the destruction of property.
Yeah, we could absolutely hold two thoughts, but again, I don't believe that all destruction of property is the same thing. Breaking that glass, just as an example, is not the same thing as breaking into a member of Congress's office. A staff member who for 2 or 3 minutes can't get out of the building is not the same as someone attempting to tie up a member of Congress and leave them inside.
Agreed.
Right? There are demonstrations, there's destruction of property. I wouldn't, for example, I wouldn't compare someone. Let me not use that example. I don't want to take an extreme example because it'll become a distraction. But what I'm saying is, you could take multiple instances of something, and you have to dig underneath the surface to understand the intent. Otherwise, they will all start to look the same. And those people who tried to overthrow the government on January 6th are very different than those students, not just in terms of their intent, but I would argue the actual tactics, the action. If left to their own devices, the people on January 6th would have killed people. They would have killed, more people would have died in that building if we had not resisted them. Those Columbia students weren't trying to kill anybody. They weren't trying to take over the university. So I don't even think in terms of the actual practical analysis that they're the same thing.
Okay, let me read some of the comments, and then hopefully there's a question in there for you. So Marty says, breaking the windows remind me of January 6th. You don't like music says, what about destroying a whole society? And let's see. Fire Ice says, I do not agree with the students and taking over the building, and I wish they sat down on the ground and signs that read pro-life and anti-war. What could they have done better? Should they go to Washington? That's a real question. Should they be protesting in Washington? Do you think it would be more effective if they protested in Washington instead of at their universities?
No, because part of what they're protesting is the university's investments in Israel. Part of what they're protesting is the university being complicit in the oppression of Palestinian people through their funding. And so I think being in Washington is effective, but I don't think it's the only front where it should be. And I think particularly when we talk about college students, I have a kid in college. I want her to protest on campus. I'm not sending her all the way down to DC. I can't afford that. I can't even afford strong internet. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to do this right here on this campus.
Mark, a couple more. Cindy Terry says, it is a mini 1-6 breaking windows out and destroying public property. Donna says that was an outside agitator. We're going to talk about that. Pacman 20. Okay, we'll talk about that, but just real quickly. Pacman 28 says, if Mark wants peace, will he call for Hamas to accept the ceasefire?
I
know that's two different things, right? But they are protesting because of what's happening there. So
yeah, I think everyone is demanding a ceasefire. I absolutely support a ceasefire. Hamas has said that they will support a ceasefire. They've been asking for a ceasefire. It's Israel, not Hamas, that won't honor a ceasefire. I mean, Netanyahu said 2 days ago that even if there is a ceasefire, it won't stop the invasion, a ground invasion of Rafah. So it's Israel that's saying it won't abide by a ceasefire. But I'm not doing whataboutism. I'm saying unequivocally, yes, I think that all sides should engage in a ceasefire. I think the Israeli hostages should be returned. I think all warfare should stop from the Israeli side as well. I am very clear about this. I want peace, but we have to remember justice is always the precondition of peace. Asking Palestinians to be peaceful while they remain victims of genocide and apartheid, I think, is unreasonable.
Okay, so the Taste says there's always a couple of idiots in protests. There was no need to destroy property. Carol White says, I don't think the students ever intended to do that. Rose says, I don't think they should be breaking private property. Suzanne Wallach says, yes, Don, your tweet was tone deaf, like Columbia complaining the students' encampment killed their nice lawn. Okay, I get that. Vicky Z says, that was not peaceful. This is a question that I have for you about outside agitators, etc. There is a chance that there are outside agitators embedded with students, says Patricia M. Suarez. Just think of the tents. They are all the same across the country. Who is funding those tents? Are people funding this? And what about the outside agitators?
I know at Columbia, outside forces were not funding the tents. I can tell you that I have firsthand knowledge and was directly communicating with the students there. I spent time at the Columbia University encampment a week ago, and they were all students. Now, once I leave the campus and I go around the corner still, or I should say, once I leave the lawn, but I'm still on the campus, there are outsiders who are protesting. There are people with signs. There are people shouting things. And part of what the media did was conflate the people on Columbia campus from the actual student community. We saw this at Northeastern University as well, where there was a peaceful protest with students and faculty. Someone screams, kill the Jews, kill all Jews. The person who screamed it out was berated by the students and faculty who said, this is anti-Semitism, knock it off. They shouted the person down. The students still got in trouble. Faculty still got in trouble. They did more investigation at Northeastern University in Boston. Turns out the person yelling, scream, kill all Jews was actually a Zionist. They were somebody there to agitate the crowd to start something. And I presume they were hoping that comment would be well received, but it was not. I have been at events. I was at an event with Cornel West maybe 4 years ago at Harvard on a panel where similarly someone stood up and said something deeply anti-Semitic. Both Cornel and I both denounced it, rejected it, and so did the crowd. So in my experience, the outside agitators are the one who bring the anti-Semitism, the violence. I saw this in Ferguson, and you were there, peaceful march, then somebody throws a glass, somebody throws a bottle. Yeah. It often wasn't the people from Ferguson or St. Louis, it was often these outsiders.
Right. Same thing with George Floyd. And I remember people saying, like, most of the people who were there genuinely, who cared about it, they were not indulging in such things, but there are outsiders who come in. And then we did see, there was actually evidence, and I'm not sure if anybody was charged. Remember the people who were getting off of the bus and they were breaking windows, and there were actually these white guys, and they were saying, yeah, do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So that does happen. Listen, people say that the protesters had to turn violent, their action had turned violent because college administrators this is a quote from them, ignored peaceful protests. But to me, it sounds, I mean, it almost sounds a little bit Trumpian, because you know, Trump justified seizing power by force on January 21 because he lost in court.
Right. Right. You lose the legal battle, so then you take an extra legal approach. Yeah, I think that is wrongheaded. I don't think that's the same thing as students, though. Again, I think that there are multiple levels here. You ask, you demand, you march, then you sit in. And then if that doesn't work, you keep going as you fight for justice. Now, that doesn't mean anything goes. I don't think you should be killing people. I don't think you should be destroying other people's property. And again, I don't agree with breaking that window, for example, at Columbia. I think that's wrong. I don't think, though, that that's reflective of the bulk of the movement. But I also don't think that that should become a distraction from the 99% of students with the righteous cause. And I think
I agree with that. But part of it when analyzing that, this is not is to, I mean, the truth is that, you know, folks are going to turn that into it. You know, the right is turning that into it. If you go on Twitter, it is January 6th, and all they're going to do, you know, this is going to end up in campaign ads if they're not already, and just clip after clip of breaking windows and, you know, bottle rockets and things being thrown, and they're going to say, look at the left. Now, these students claim to be on the left, right? Are progressives, but it seems to me when they do things like this, not all of them, but that they are working to elect Trump instead of Joe Biden.
I mean, yeah, I don't think strategically it's wise. And again, I would pull them aside and say, hey, you should move like this instead of that. A lot of these people don't have direct action training. A lot of these people have never organized or been activists on the ground. These are kids, you know, so I get that. Again, for me, it's how we who respect their position, even if we don't agree with it fully, how we respond to it. That's the only thing that I would say, because if we amplify, and I'm not talking about you exclusively here, I'm saying in general, if we amplify the narrative that they're closer to January 6th than they are to August 2863 on the March on Washington, then we make it harder for them to do their job. They lose faith and trust in us, and we become part of the distraction instead of part of the support network that these young people need to become organized, righteous activists, you know. But I will say this too, though, you know, I believe in peace, but I don't fetishize it. You know, I don't worship it. It's a tactic to me, not a overall philosophy.
Well, yeah, and listen, even during the civil rights movement, we know not all protests were peaceful, but the reason that Dr. King was doing that, basically say, you know, Black people are not animals, right? And, and they didn't want to provoke people. I know that. And, you know, just like every discussion or disagreement is not going to be civil. Like when people say, oh, what happened to civility? I'm like, people argue. Right. We're not civil during arguments sometimes.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah. So listen, all right. So here's what Cobalt Chris says. He says, we are having protests here too at Washington University and St. Louis University. I don't know if do we have the UCLA video? There's also, we had some unrest at UCLA and I'm not sure that we have it, but if you have it, roll it. If not, there are protests all over the country in UCLA, you know, St. Louis University and others. What's your advice to the students there?
1, remain steadfast. 2, don't capitulate to weak compromises. At Northwestern University, where the students are being so courageous and so powerful, I didn't like that the university offered them a concession that, look, we'll let you protest for 30 more days and we'll give you a protest area. It's like, if they give you a protest area and tell you how long you can protest, it's not a protest. Because it's like, look at them over there resistant. No, the whole point of a protest is to disrupt the status quo. It's to make power uneasy. If power says, look, protest in that square over there, that's not much of a protest. So I would say that. I would also tell them, though, be very, very organized, be very, very disciplined, just like the Freedom Riders were, because there are people outside who will goad you into violence. They will goad you into problematic chants. They will goad you into weak compromises. But have a plan, be organized, listen to your elders. But also remember, this is your march.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, do you have a little more time to be?
I can do a few more minutes.
Okay. So I'm going to do some rapid fire here. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's right hand on your screen. You see right there by Mark's shoulder, right there by his left pec, and then make sure you hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate it. So like and subscribe. Okay. So here's Mark. Real quickly, if you can answer these really quickly. Where did I want to go? Okay, Don, this is from Angela Jones. Why is it always the problem of the United States to solve other countries' wars and problems? Mark?
I don't think it's always our responsibility, but I think with Israel, we have to be a little more nuanced here. Israel only is able to prosecute its current war in Gaza because we provide weapons, because we provide money, and because we provide diplomatic cover. We're the ones vetoing ceasefire resolutions in the UN Security Council. We're the one who just decided to send 20 plus, I think it's $28 billion in aid, at least 9 of which is going to go to military aid. The U.S. literally is the reason why Israel is able to function the way it does. So it's our job to finish it because it was our power that started it.
Nicholas Rio says, do you think last night will bring change?
I do. I think America has a very low threshold for white misery. When John F. Kennedy walks through Harlem in 1960 holding up a black baby, it was dismissed as a campaign stunt. He's trying to make Adam Clayton Powell happy. He's just trying to get white liberal sympathetic tears, right? It wasn't seen as much. When Bobby Kennedy walks through Appalachia a few years later, he's in West Virginia holding up a white baby whose belly is bloated, snot's coming down his face, he's crying. We begin our war on poverty. People don't like white people suffering. The World Central Kitchen, 7 people died, and people said, oh my God, they're killing civilians over there in Gaza. They've been killing civilians over in Gaza. Watching black people get locked up is one thing. Watching black people get addicted to crack is one thing. But when you get an opioid crisis, oh, Congress is going to do something. And when you see students at Yale and UCLA and Columbia start getting arrested and brutalized, oh, America going to act different. Oh, it's going to be real different.
Carol White, I don't get it. Why does the U.S. send Israel so much money? Like, what's that about?
You know, that's a very long, complicated answer that I teach courses on. But I would say the short answer right now is that it's in the U.S.'s best interest. The U.S. likes having an ally in the Middle East. It likes having a strategic outpost in the Middle East. And it's all countries do this. They all like to have allies and homies around the country, around the world. And the U.S. has decided to have a very long bromance with Israel that really begins during the Kennedy administration.
Yeah. Marcy, aka Leopard Lady, says, what's Marc's last name? It is Lamont Hill. And you can watch Marc on Upfront on Al Jazeera, also Night School on YouTube. So make sure you go to Night School on YouTube and like and subscribe there. Marc, I know you have to go, so I will give you the last word here. What do you have to say? I appreciate you coming on and talking about these things. So, and we'd hope to have you come back. What's your final message?
My final thought is, you know, I send, again, encouragement, love, and peace to everybody, but specifically to these students in the United States right now who are marching and protesting. Y'all are carrying on a great and beautiful tradition. But as we debate these students, we must also not lose sight of the fact that more than nearly 35,000 people have been killed in Gaza. More than 77,000 have been wounded. 1.7 million are displaced and unhoused. Every university has been destroyed. We could go on and on and on. Let's not lose sight of the fact that there's a genocide going on in Gaza, and that it's our duty to stop it. It's our duty to do our part. It's our duty to speak the truth.
Marc, I appreciate that. I lied. There's one more quick thing.
Yeah.
I have to ask you about what we used to do on CNN. So, Marc, we have a president who is in downtown Manhattan facing one of 4 court cases that he may have to get to before the election. This may be the only one. Also in front of the Supreme Court. As you've been watching this, can you believe what the do you know what is? I can't believe this. When we were covering Trump back in 15, 16, 17, I never would have thought that he would have, you know, people talk about a black president. This man has more charges than any.
Donald Trump defies every black stereotype. He got like 15 kids, 18 baby mamas. He got cases. He got, you know, like he does everything that stereotypically get attributed to black people. He has shocked me at every turn, from becoming president to damn near overthrowing the government to now catching all these cases. I would not have seen this coming, but maybe I should have. I think he's going to beat the New York case. I think he's going to be found guilty on other things. And sadly, I think it's only going to make him more of a folk hero. He's going to be like Tupac to these MAGA cats.
And you think he's going to go to Cheesecake Factory to celebrate?
Yo, that is still the greatest clip in internet. It's definitely cable news internet history, man. Like we couldn't have written that any better, yo. It isn't a day that goes by that somebody don't mention the Cheesecake Factory to me.
That and my Omarosa moment with Simone Sanders. But listen, that was the good old days, and we'll continue to do that here. Hopefully, we'll get the band back together.
For
Marc,
sure.
We love having you. Thank you, man. You be well.